How's it going?
Long time, my friend.
Yeah. How are things?
I'm good, man.
Yeah.
I'm good. Yeah. Living life and working hard, usual stuff. Raising two girls and doing all that kind of fun stuff, man. So.
How old are the girls?
My youngest is 12 and the eldest is 14, man.
Future goalkeepers?
You know what? Funnily enough, the eldest is about. Oh God, she's not too far away from being 6 foot, man.
Wow.
But she's look, she was a track kid, but she was, I don't know what got into her. At an early age, I think she caught onto her uncle's old school headbanging records from back in the day. She's like a wild child, man. She has kind of this wild spirit, very alternative, grungy type of girl, but she was always into she always had that energy, like a roaring energy. So she took to track and field, and she specifically was really good at discus, and she was up at a state level at a young age, but I don't know. She just kind of pushed it to the side. She, as a goalkeeper, though, I don't know. I don't think that's going to happen.
I'm sure you're proud either way.
I can't be more proud than I am for both of them, brother. How are you? That's more important. How are you going?
We're good. I think it's interesting. I was having a conversation today where this woman is in the mental health field, and we were just chatting. Her daughter plays for me at the club level, and she used the term compassion fatigue, and I had never heard of that before. But I know that in the past couple weeks, I've just felt this unmistakable weight that isn't acute and isn't really there's not a something that I need to solve or fix. It's just these are heavy times for all of us, and I think there's so many well-intentioned good folks that are trying to navigate their way through waters that none of us have ever been. And so there's just there's a lot of joy as well, and there's a lot of good times. And I was just talking to my facilities guy, and he said, look, I have a college senior and I have a sophomore in high school, son and daughter, and I'll never get back the 2.5 months that I've just spent with them. And so
amazing.
Yeah, you got to find the positive, but I also think we've got to do a really good job in both acknowledging and supporting our athletes, their families, and ourselves in this weight of what's going on and how it affects our mental health.
I think there's it's good that you really covered that that point specifically, and it is a kind of it's almost a double-edged sword. Like, you see a lot of things that are tumultuous in the environment around us, but I think at the same time too, there's been so many amazing positives that have come out of the chaos, and it's probably analogous to almost life after death, right? So there's so much craziness and death and kind of destruction, but then at the tail end of it, there truly is some light, and the light there is things like what you mentioned about being able to connect again at a human level with other people.
Yeah.
And not just family, but walking the street, going for a jog, someone smiles at you, you smile back. You say hello to the person that's walking past you, they say hello back. And then from a family perspective, just spending time with those people that count the most. And I guess, even from your perspective, Coach, I think about it from this perspective. You've got all these kids who commit to a program, and now everyone's kind of disparate at the minute. You've got to find a way to bring everyone together. And, technology it can be a bane, but it can, but it can also be something that's, really positive in a way that you're able to reconnect with people and just express, selves and your feelings and emotions in times that are challenging. So how have you guys been navigating, the waters at the minute with everything going on as a program?
Yeah, so I think, this kind of all hit us, and I think everyone was searching for how to connect, and obviously I feel everyone has found that platform with Zoom and online, and even this, and I think it served a huge purpose. I also was really surprised at how much you could connect even on these platforms. You can have conversations with your players and prospective families and recruits, and even our athletic department. We're holding our meetings, and you're exchanging ideas, but you can also still exchange emotions. And I think that was something that was interesting to me. To be able to connect. I'm doing a leadership program with my seniors right now and my staff, and so every Monday we're still connecting online. And Jeff Jansen is doing that. It's tremendous, and you can still develop some relationships, and you can still kind of get your way through work that needs to be done. But I just feel, and I don't want to speak for anyone else, but I'm comfortable in saying this about my program because I speak with them often. I think everyone is ready to turn the page, and they just want to see each other again. They want to be with each other. They want to start to play. And I think that they want some steady ground, which unfortunately we can't give to them or even ourselves right now, that, hey, we're going to have a season. We're going to move forward. And look, we're inching our way towards that with each passing day. But it's been interesting. And then I'll tell you, some other platforms, we got creative and used, there's a platform called Kahoot, which is basically, you can develop your own, quizzes and that. And I fell in love with it. My player, if they're listening right now, they're probably all rolling their eyes because they're like, if I see another Kahoot quiz, but I thought it was great. You could go into the archives and say, do you know what year the program last won the league championship? Right up to, give me in order the ideas or thoughts you need to have when you're the first offender. And you could present it in different forms, and I loved it. I'll tell you, and I think for me, I just wanted to try to keep it fresh. And as a coach, and I think this is a real strength of our community, when you start to share ideas and gain access at the speed that the past couple months has been, it's great. We did some real, the NWSL had all last year's games for free. And so we would do analysis. We'd send it out and say, look, you're the coach in the second half. What situations are you going to change, or what do you want to see? And I need a 5-minute video from your group. And I'll tell you, it's one thing to go through them, but then at times you get to see the personalities of your team. For instance, one of my players who has a huge personality, in her video, dressed like me and talked like me. And it's just, I'm not sure if I tell the players enough, but we need those moments too. I'm always wearing a hoodie and she's with the hood. fighting it, and she's using all of these sayings that I'll use, and I showed it to my wife, and I had a good laugh. It was a good moment, and I think we all need more of those right now.
Yeah, I think so, and I think that just the fact that you're able to, and it's something that you wouldn't necessarily do in season, right? Just so many moving parts during conference play and otherwise, and even pre-season. People here, everyone, the players yourselves, coaches, the coaching staff, it hits the ground running, and you don't really have time to, connect in that way. And I really like that, from a Cahoots perspective, that you used, questions around the program and the history of it, because I'm seeing, from my perspective, like the tail end of a 4-year process for a student athlete. They come out that tail end and they've become part of something that will probably never disconnect. That they'll never disconnect from that. The whole experience throughout the 4 years. So what they soon realise is that every single collegiate soccer program, men's, women's, whatever division it is, whatever body, has some kind of history or is creating a history. And Saint Anselm is very historical in terms of just the school itself, right? And then you think about the conference that you play in, all the schools within the Northeast 10 historical schools. Outside of that, you have, your own history as a program that a lot of these kids, and especially for some freshmen who may have recruited, they wouldn't have a clue about it, right?
Right.
And so it's such a neat way to actually take a step back and say, hey, you know what you're part of? This is history. This is a historical program, and you're part of this. And for them to get clarity around that, I think is fantastic. But you know what, Coach? I want to go back in time a little bit. You know what's something that always drew me to our connection? I was always a massive boxing fan, right? Still to this day.
Sure.
I know that Dad was a boxer. Was that right?
Yeah, you've got a good memory.
How did that shape you? How did Dad, as a boxer and otherwise? I want to get into your head about that, because for me, I grew up around a whole bunch of boxers, middleweight champions, guys who went over to the US. I think I told you the story of, a very dear friend of mine who was under my steward at the Kronk, and, fought his first professional fight in Vegas many, many years ago now. But I'm always and I was always in and around that. I was a footballer, I trained as a footballer, but I was always so swayed by this mentality and this work ethic and this grit around boxing. So you do have a history in the family. Talk to us about that. Yeah.
Well, first of all, credit to you, because I've done more than a few of these, and that might be the best question that anyone's ever asked me, and the one that I wasn't prepared for. So, how to shake up the apple cart right away. Yeah, look, so my family from Portland, Maine, and my dad, really my mom and dad, my mother was from a large Italian family that grew up on Munjoy Hill, and geographically speaking, it's not going to mean much to you, but in the States, people might know it. And my father, really an Irish, French family, and they were... all the brothers in some capacity were involved in boxing. And so, there was I don't think it exists anymore, but there was a place called the Griffin Club, which was just, you'd go there and box. And in the 70s and 80s, it was a smaller world. So you would see some really elite fighters, and, obviously the Ali bout ended up coming to Lewiston, Maine, where everyone looks at that one. But there were great local fights at the Portland Exposition Building, now just known as the Expo. And, my father just took a shine to it. And so, I didn't see him box, but growing up, I was the oldest. and my dad's a great storyteller. And so, I'm not sure there is a single match in the ring or outside of the ring that I've not heard about from his perspective. And, he fought in the Golden Gloves program. He actually fought the Golden Glove champion twice. He fought him once to a draw in the Golden Glove champion's hometown. And I can hear my dad saying right now, because I've heard it a million times, that if it wasn't in his hometown, he felt he probably would have gotten the decision. But we know with boxing, you can't leave it to the judges. But look, I think, and I think this is where you were going with this, that being reared in that environment where it's just kind of you against your opponent, I always had a certain edge to me, because if I would go to my father was actually a better basketball player than probably a boxer, and so we would spend many hours on the court. But we would go, I remember, we would go to the local college, and I would see adults playing pickup basketball. And my dad would say, and I was 8, my dad would say, we're going to go play them 2-on-2. And I was like, I was at times tearful. I'm like, I don't want to do it. My dad would drag me there, but it just hardens you, John, and you look back and then you start winning those games, and you kind of realize that the preconceived notions in your own mind of what you can and cannot do have almost zero play in actuality, and so it was really just getting over that. And so, I've always looked back at those times as times that have developed me. And now I think it's interesting because with age and maybe experience, I want my players to have that edge, that bite, and we will at times discuss, hey, either we produce or we don't. But I will also say that, we live in different times now, and I think that I think the earlier version of me as a coach, and I often will speak to those college kids are now starting families, and they were on the men's side, but I'm not sure I gave them the level of empathy and understanding if they were not in my first 11, and so I think now, while I don't think I've lost that, I think I see the bigger picture a bit better than the 26-year-old coach, first job, that just wanted to win so savagely. Like, let's just win, And so now I realize that there's a bit more to it than that.
I think that you get molded by those experiences, and I don't think being, probably an ultra competitor in your mind, whether it be, if you're physically and mental, but mentally as well as a coach, I don't think that is a bad path to kind of undertake, because you're going to crash and burn somewhere, and that's where the learning curve is, right? And I think from there you take that, and when you crash and burn, then you kind of dig deeper and you look inwardly and you start, resonating with the people around you in a more empathetic, I guess, way. So, younger versions of ourselves were absolutely that. I still have tinges of that, you know what I mean? And I think I still have it as a father raising children. It's no different. Like, for me, I want them to succeed. I don't want them sitting on their asses doing nothing. I want them to go out and crush the world. I want them to do that. But then there's the other side that says, okay, they're human beings as well, so you got to be, again, have a bit of empathy towards them their journey as well and let them grow and flourish in their own life. So I think what you're saying there I think it's very, very good. I think the things that you experienced growing up around a father that was ultra competitive and a family unit that grew up around that molded you to the person that you are today, and you were able to, one, be competitive at a very high level. You're obviously a Division One coach with a very different mentality for the most part.
Sure.
And then you took that and you took those experiences and evolved yourself as a coach to where you are today. So, where did the passion for football come from, soccer? Where did that come from? Was that dad? Was that mum? Obviously, ethnic kind of parents. And where did that come from?
It's a good question. So, my mother was a nurse. She's recently retired, but one of her early clinical rotations was in an emergency room, and she unfortunately witnessed firsthand a school American football player sustain a major injury, and that led to paralysis. And so I remember when I was like 5 or 6 years old, sign-ups for all the sports were there, and all my friends were playing American football, and I wanted to play American football, and all my uncles played, and I'm like, let's do it. And my mom's like, you're never playing this sport. I'm like, you're kidding. So she signed me up for the local YMCA five-year-old version of soccer, and that was it. Like, I loved it. And there were times where, I got to high school, and my high school coach asked me if I wanted to kick for the American football team, and I'm like, that seems reasonable. And at the time you're 18, you're not. And she was just adamant that it was never going to happen. So it's interesting now because, and my history. I'm very thankful for our friendship over the past 8 or 9 years. But my parents reside in Maine, and I've been in a bunch of states that are far from Maine. And so my mother will remind me whenever I'm looking at jobs that I wouldn't have these opportunities had she not signed me up for soccer. And so to not stray too far from home. So she's very happy I'm in New Hampshire, the next state over from her right now. And if she had her druthers, I would stay at my current job for the rest of my life.
That's special and beautiful, right? Because, we all lean into our parents in some way, and they are our platform, right? So, it's amazing that she said, no, hey, I've seen the other side of all these other sports, and I don't think people understand the size, the height, and strength of an American football player generally. And people go, oh, they wear pads, right? We're rugby people over here in Australia, so, we don't wear pads and they're big boys, but, the boys in America are probably, even bigger and stronger and otherwise. So, it was interesting that she kind of saw that experience and said, hey, I want you to be able to kind of play a sport that, for the most part is a lot safer. But New Hampshire, and obviously growing up in and around the region, what was football like growing up around New Hampshire? What was it like? Was it a high level of football? Was there local competitions with a lot of men's teams that were of good quality? Was it ethnically based, like it was back in the day when I was growing up in and around Sydney? A lot of ethnic based type club. Yeah. What was your experience growing up playing football?
Yeah, so I think it was really in its early inception. And the platform that we see now with club soccer and them being like real business entities, frankly, didn't exist. In fact, I remember convincing a teacher at my high school, he was also our JV soccer coach, that there was this club state tournament that you could sign up for, and then you could go to, at the time, it was called the Snickers Cup, which was it was like state, regional, national. And I remember it was interesting coming from me because, we would go play these high school teams, and I was a center back or a defensive center mid, and, I was physical and, hard in the tackle. Like I'm not even sure I could have juggled a ball 50 times, so I was 16 or 17. But so then I'm calling the very same people that I kicked up for 90 minutes saying, hey, do you want to be part of this team? Like, it's going to be great. And they're like, who is this Moon Man? Like, this guy just kicked for 90 minutes. But, we ended up having a wonderful team. And really, there was a few teams prior to us, but one of our teams was the first one that was an actual club team. And it was great. And then, we started training in local gyms and, whenever we could, and just entering those competitions. But I will tell you, I think one of my biggest influences is, again, there was a pickup soccer game in Portland, Maine. If you walk, there's a place called Back Bay. It's a 3.5 mile loop, I think. And basically it's a walking path, but there's also a field. And there was always this pickup soccer game there. And so, again, for me, 16, have my license, I went to Back Bay to run the loop because, that was just kind of all I knew was being fit and, kind of lifting weights and doing it all the wrong way and benching 47 times a week versus, but I just got brave one day and hopped in this game and was completely outclassed. And I mean outclassed for months. But I just kept going back. And that's how I developed the aspect of my game that were almost barren. I mean, I was a technical infant compared to my players now. And you learn nuance and you learn creativity and you learn the passion. And then another thing that you learned is that there's no coach there. So when a disagreement breaks out, you have to figure out how to settle that amongst, 7, 8 different ethnicities and people that are different ages. And so I took a lot away from those years. And even at times we'll go up and visit Maine, and when we'll drive by, like that feeling, that emotion of that development is with me. And I look at kids now, and look, I'm involved in the club soccer program, and I think that there's a lot of real positives. But, in those 3 years, I didn't spend $8,000 to be part of a club team. I just got my butt kicked for 3 straight years. And it was the best development I ever could have had.
Yeah. Yeah, and you learn and grow in those kinds of environments. I saw it from a very different perspective because everything that I did was always very structured.
Yeah.
Where I really saw the other side of the game was as a younger guy as well. By the time I was 15, I was in Europe. I was already playing elite football here at a youth level in Australia. And probably the most interesting time I was scouted by a scout from a big club in Croatia called Dinamo Zagreb.
Yep.
He said, you got to be over in Croatia this time. Mum and Dad said, no problem, we've got a lot of family there, it's all good. Hopped over, it was winter, mind you, so I ended up being stuck on an island just off the coast of Croatia at my uncle's place, and waiting for the scout to give me the call to get back all the way up north to Zagreb. And the way that I saw the other side of football was just like you experienced it. And I started understanding from this experience where, for example, what I'd do is I'd get absolutely bored out of my mind. There was nothing to do. It wasn't the tourist season. There was no one around on the island. I'd get up in the morning early and I'd go run the whole island. I'd just run down. There's an old bridge that leads to the mainland to another little town, a very historic town called Torbiet, and I'd go all the way there. I'd run all the way back, and my uncle's place was right by the water, and near the water there was what they called the camp, and that's where all the camper vans and the tourists from Germany and wherever would come, and they'd dock there. But it'd be cleared out, so all the local boys would come down, get a raggedy ball, and just go absolutely toe to toe. So I saw the other side of football from that experience. These kids, I had a lot of privilege from a footballing perspective because I grew up in an environment where I was nurtured, whereas these kids were just absolutely scrapping to enhance their skills, and it was like a bloodbath. Like, it was just concrete, wall on either side. It was like a goal, small mini goal that was painted on the wall, and they just absolutely go toe to toe. So I'd join in a little bit, and you'd see the intensity of it. So I saw a very, very different side, and I think it helped me grow and develop further, because I saw later on, and especially as I travelled up north to play, train at clubs like Dinamo, those guys were just very, very, very different mentality and different level.
Yeah.
Like in terms of their mentality and their work ethic, because they came from those similar environments. So they were just scrapping to get an opportunity to go play at a higher level, which they eventually did. So it was a very, very interesting thing that you mentioned that in your own progression and development. Now, this is really interesting for me, and a lot of people that are viewing or will view this post us pushing up. Your journey as a coach is very interesting as well. So I'm assuming you started at maybe potentially a high school club level, and then it transitioned. Obviously you were a player and otherwise, and then it transitioned into the collegiate ranks. But you started in the Division 1 ranks, University of I think it's Penn State. So, and then as a head coach at UMass Lowell, that's how we connected many years ago. And then obviously now as the head coach at Saint Anselm. Do you want to talk about that kind of trajectory? Do you want to talk about as well the nuances that you saw as a Division 1 assistant at a very large power type conference team, through to UMass Lowell taking that over, and now into St Anselm's, and the nuances between like Division 1 and Division 2? Because a lot of kids and families and otherwise who might be watching, they don't really understand what those kind of nuances are, and your experiences as a coach at the ground level, at the coalface, around those different programs.
Yeah, great question. So when I wrapped up playing, I hopped right into licensure for the USSF, and really, again, we talk about influence. I was around coaches that were really pro USSF. So at the time, they're really and so I think in a span of 4 years, like one a year, I did my F, my E, my D, my C, and my B. And so as I was acquiring those licenses, opportunities kind of present themselves in the club game. And then locally, I was still in Maine. So, I started out at a local level, really on the men's side. So I was a head coach of a community college, Southern Maine Community College. And then I moved on to St. Joseph's College of Maine on the men's side. Then I made the jump to Penn State. And for me, and it goes back to what we were talking about, and I think that everyone's journey to be their own, but I would see higher levels on TV, and I would see folks from those levels, and I just wanted to see if I could do that. And so, and it's not a knock, some people, I'll have these conversations to this day, and they'll say, why did you leave Maine? Your family's there and stuff. And I just wanted to test myself, John. Like, I wanted to grow, and I wanted to see what it was like. I think that folks from Maine, specifically in soccer, it can be a bit of an inferiority complex because we're not one of the larger, most developed areas. We're not in New Jersey or Baltimore or San Diego or things of that nature, even Massachusetts. So I wanted to explore, and I had the opportunity to do it at Penn State, and you couldn't write a better script where we go to the national championship in 2012. We win the Big Ten, which is they win a Big Ten like most programs show up in preseason. They just win year in and year out. And it was great. And it was great to have those resources and work with Erica Walsh and just kind of grow in the women's game. And then, as you said, I was given some opportunities at UMass Lowell as well. And that was a whole different can of worms. It was a Division II program that was ascending into Division I. So really, you're building a Division I program and all that comes with it. And so, I think from all those things, I took a lot, and it molded me. But I'll tell you, and this will get into the Division II piece. I started as the first assistant at UMass Lowell, and then I took the program over for the 3 remaining years. And I got to year 3, and I was just fatigued. And we qualified for playoffs a year ahead of when they were going to let us in. So we beat UNH on the final day, and there's a 4-year, they call it a grace period, when you're making a transition from any division. And by year 3, we were a playoff team. And so in terms of securing my next contract or staying there, we had checked every box that we needed to check. But I was recently married, and I came home, and I said to my wife, Erin, I said, look, I'm going to step away. And she almost fell off the couch because, as you know, there's about 350 of those jobs in the United States, and I guess it depends on what lens you look at. Some probably looked at it and said, what is this guy doing, and what incredible arrogance, and others might have said, well, they probably fired him, and it comes out as a resignation. But, the truth was I had brought the team to a level that I felt I would always be content with if I stepped away. And I needed to do that. And so I have to be honest. We were trying to figure out what was next. We were involved with club soccer, and my wife is very enterprising. She's far more brighter than I am. And she just saw this advertisement for St. A's, and she's like, why don't you take a look at it? I said, okay. And I was the last person of like 250 applicants. And thank God the now AD, Darren, saw something interesting to have a phone conversation, and a phone conversation led to an interview, and an interview led to Final 3, and then it led to this position, which I'm in love with. Like, it's the happiest I've been. And again, it's a bit of a build. You've done your homework. St. A's is a wonderful academic institution that has a deep and rich history. But with respect to their sports, I think they're writing a new chapter. Our softball team is elite. They've lost in a national championship. Our field hockey team is elite. But that's only really happened in the last 5 or 6 years outside of men's basketball and outside of women's ice hockey. They have a bit longer history. So I was the first full-time coach that they've hired there, and that makes a difference. Like, we know that. And so, I think you mentioned about the journey and the differences. I often do presentations for club kids because I'm a director, and I tell them this. I think that there's certainly differences between Division I and Division II. Division II will start a little bit later in the summer, usually by a couple days. There's a travel disparity where, if you're at Penn State, every game you're hopping on a plane to play. And we're seeing that now with how leagues are breaking up. Like, the Big East just broke up into like an East region and a Midwest region due to COVID. So it'll be Providence and St. John's and UConn, but they won't go and play Creighton and Marquette or what have you. So the travel is different at the highest level of Division I. But really the big line for me, John, is Division 1 and 2 are kind of in the same pot for me, and then Division 3 is the biggest difference because they just don't allow you as many hours to train your teams. So it's not a negative. It's whatever you'd like. There's certainly, more balance at that level. But there's very little spring season. If it is, it's kind of an independent one with your captains leading it, which is great. It kind of grows you in that manner. But that's really the difference. And then I think sometimes resources, I think you look at these larger institutions, we're blessed to have a turf stadium, a grass stadium, our own training facilities, which is grass. I mean, sometimes not everyone has that. And so I think it's just been an interesting, but for me, I wanted to strike the balance of, can I still work with the scholarship kid? Can I still get the email from John saying, I've got this 2022 you need to look at? But also strike a balance of being as good of a husband and brother and person as maybe I wanted to be a soccer coach 7 years ago.
Yeah. That's so pretty profound that you say that, but it's part of the journey again. If we go back to, what you want and what you think you want is not always the right first stepping stone, but it's a learning curve. And the next few steps are always going to be better and better. And when you get to that point where you're in a position like you are now, all those experiences allow you, to be able to, grow and evolve in an environment that's just going to make you a lot happier. And that happiness is going to resonate back into everything you do and the people that you impact around you, whether it be your coaching staff, your players, and the rest of your school community, which is good. I mean, it's all part of the journey. So I always say that I'm blessed to see you in that position, man, because I always think about you. And probably one of my biggest regrets was limited time. The last time I was out in the East Coast, and I know that, and I still remember seeing the sign. I was driving up to New Hampshire. I was running late to get to a graduation that day for one of our boys, and I was like, "Oh God, I've got to stop. I want to stop by and see Joel, but I know I'm running out of time." So, hopefully once this all clears, and definitely I want to come out that way without doubt. But we're going to continue this discussion because we still have about 17 minutes here on the platform. But I'll look at the conference. Let's talk a little bit more about the NE10. A lot of people just don't understand that, and the NE10 is a very historical conference. In essence, you've seen a lot of, and it's interesting because you touched on your experience as a Division 1 coach, but then you also see that over the years there have been many programs that have come into or out of the NE10 that Division 1 programs, and or even programs that were Division 1 and have come back into the NE10, for example. So it's one of those conferences that is perennially very, very strong. If I look at your results since you came back into the fold there and took over the reins, it's been quite pragmatic and progressive. How do you feel that, last season there, and obviously now this season coming up with everything that's happened with COVID and otherwise, how are you prepping for this season in terms of not only, you're going back on campus now and you're going to be able to potentially start training the kids in preparation for some kinds of season, and how is it affecting your recruiting cycles as well, internationally and locally? So where are you up to and how you feel about everything that's evolved from the last few years since you took over to today?
Yeah, so like I said, it's been a wonderful build, and I think that one thing for sure that was here well in advance of me showing up was high character kids, and really high academic kids. And so, we it's funny, like you look at last year, and it was probably the most interesting year I've ever had as a coach, because on one hand, we only lost 3 matches.
Yeah.
We had 7 draws. And so, we had a couple of things that happened before the season. We lost some key players to injury that we thought would help us in our front line. But it's definitely the best soccer that we've played since we've been here. And I think that that's saying a lot, because the year before, our recruiting cycles where we were done our 2020, and we're all but done our 2021s, where others maybe are in a bit of a pain with this COVID piece. So we've got a large, robust class of 12 coming in this year. Because I also, part of us auditing last year was that there's some real strengths to being a small team. We had like 25 on our roster, but I also think there's some real weaknesses. And so I, in the offseason, looked deeply into the last 5 years of the NE10 playoffs, and then I looked into the last 2 years of the NCAA tournament, and I wanted to determine the median roster size. And we were 4 or 5 players below the median roster. And so, and I felt that. We felt that. We had a span of 3 or 4 games where we lose 2 of our all-conference kids and another attacker, and we came up with some draws that, had they been wins, it would have been a different ending to our season. And so we felt like we needed to address the depth, and that's part of the reason the group of 12 is here. But they also kind of naturally, we got there, but like I never put 12 on the board and circled it and said we need 12. We just got some really impressive kids coming in. And I think our school does a good job, and what we've been able to use as a platform is that, as you know, some of this is subjective, but our nursing program is without a doubt one of the best in New England. And so we've had a lot of female student athletes say, you know what, I've got multiple offers from some bigger schools, Division I, and they're good nursing programs, but I think I want to go to the best nursing program in New England. And so we've been able to elevate ourselves in doing that. And our conference is incredible, because one of the things that I think it's important to explain to anyone listening, Division II can be a bit like the Wild West, meaning that, in Division I, they usually have scholarship minimums in each league. So there's some parity. Like, you're not going to have a team that's fully funded and one that has no scholarships. It's a real rarity. But in the NE10, you have upwards to, there's 14 members now. Merrimack just went D1, or last year they went D1. But you have members that have very little scholarships to 7 programs that are fully funded. So that, and then you also have, as you said, some programs with, a high academic focus, like a Bentley in business or us in nursing. And then you have state schools that are primarily loaded with international players. And so you have to prepare for anything, because, on a Wednesday, you can be playing Stonehill, which has a very different play model than on Saturday when you play Franklin, and they have 8 internationals in their first 11.
Yeah.
So it's neat in that regard, but there's a lot to do. And I love the tournament conference. St. Rose this year, I believe their journey ended in the Final Four. And that's not uncommon on the women's side and the men's side. We're blessed to be in one of the best conferences in the country.
Oh, without doubt. You know, you got so many amazing teams within. Definitely so many amazing teams within that conference. Right from top to toe, it's challenging. You're in a special region, mate. You know, like for me traveling out, you know, throughout the East Coast, whether it was from top to toe, whether it was New York all the way through to New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, it was just special. Everyone that I met, all the programs that I saw, and the quality and otherwise, you're in a special region for development, like from within your own, you know, neck of the woods, but then, you know, internationally as well. I think you're kind of in a really interesting location because you're so close on the East Coast toward Europe as well. So I guess a lot of programs and network will probably leverage that, you know, that quick flight out to the UK or parts of Europe to be able to assess players if they have the budget to be able to do it. So it's quite interesting. So yeah, I mean, look, you know, it's been almost just under an hour of amazing information, and you know, I'm so very grateful that we made that connection so many, you know, years ago. I've got a whole bunch of kids coming up right up to 2022, and you know, we're always going to stay in touch. And the beauty of our relationship was always, you know, kind of very, you know, a little bit blunt in essence that, you know, you're very real and I'm very real, and we just get to the point and you say, hey, that's not my level and that's not what I'm looking for. They're not the academics that I'm looking for. Then we're all well and good. But if it's a good fit, we always have a good dialogue around it. And the beauty of that is that I always respect and appreciate for the fact that we always were open to give feedback. So if the kid wasn't of the level, you always came back and said, hey, you know what, this kid has to work on X, Y, Z to be able to be part of our program, and this is where they might be a better fit. So I'm always, you know, grateful, and you've always been really gracious for your time. So I want to make sure that you're safe. Great to hear that you're happy and in a great spot. Really, really blessed to have you on board, and one and all. Just want to thank Coach Joel Bancroft from Saint Anselm NCAA Division 2 in the Northeast 10 Conference for joining us today. Fantastic insight, not only from a soccer perspective, but just from his personal journey, and I hope you gained a lot. So, Coach, thanks again for joining us. Always grateful, brother. You know, thank you so much for being on this live chat, and we'll definitely be staying in touch shortly and right into 2020 and beyond.
Got it. I appreciate the opportunity. Look forward to staying connected. It's a great thing that you guys, or that you rather, do for all these young players in Australia. If I can ever be of any help, I'm always here, and you've always got a place to stay in New Hampshire, my friend.
All right, man, I'm grateful, and I know that, and I'm blessed. Take care, brother. You take care of your family, and we'll speak soon.
You too. Be well, John.
All right, mate. Bye-bye.